Hello, my name is Nicholas Howell. I'm getting baptized today, and this is my story. So, before knowing Christ, I grew up in a Christian home. My parents raised me in a Christian way, and went to church on and off for a few years at first, just kind of bouncing around, getting life together. And eventually, when my mom started working here, we bounced around to other churches because she didn't necessarily want to work here and come here. But there was a switch in her mind, and it was like, hey, like this is where we want to go. That Knollwood is where we want to go. Growing up, I had always assumed that my good works would get me into heaven. That if I was good enough, that if I just kept doing good in the world, that I would get there. And there were a few times where I would think about like what I was doing and how good I was being, and I'd be like, well, I'm not there. I need to keep doing some more, and I always thought that I just needed to keep doing more and more and more and more and more, because it was like it was like kind of like rotating in my head between like salvation and good works, and it was always, well, God gave me this thing, I need to work for it. I need to work for it to get there. Like He says, put it at the finish line, and I need to do my work to get there. And a list of good works for me would have been like volunteering, didn't matter where. Just volunteering, helping people out, like all that fun jazz, and doing a lot like in the church with the church. But that was also kind of hard because we went to church on and off. We didn't really have a place that we settled down. So it was mostly in my life what I thought was just a bunch of volunteer work. Just stuff I would do on the weekends, even in school when I would just help out classmates. It was just stuff like that. Well, at the finish line in my mind, it was heaven and living with Jesus, because that's what it is. Is at the end of the day you get to live with Jesus in heaven. But in my mind, it wasn't like, oh, I'm guaranteed a spot. It's I gotta work for my spot, and the more I work, like the closer I would get to sitting at the table with Jesus. Like I never thought I'd sit right next to Him, but it was always, okay, if I put in enough work and I do more good works than these other people, maybe I can sit closer, and maybe I can be closer with Him after I die. And it was just this continuous cycle and loop of just work, good work, and just keep putting myself out there and doing all this to eventually, hopefully, maybe get there one day. It was honestly really taxing. Like it's because it became a task to do, just to get to that finish line. Since it was very task-like, I wasn't very cheerful about a lot of things, like doing those things. Like I'd feign the cheerfulness doing it. In the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm doing this. Like I need to do this, not I want to do this, or God is leading me to do this. No, it was like I need to, and it was just a lot of more like a mortal need to get to that finish line, instead of a God-led line item. My sister got baptized December, I think. So around that time, December, January. And that put a thought in my head of, well, maybe I should as well. In my mind, I was like, well, I've done all these good works, maybe this is enough so that I can be baptized and then keep going. Keep doing what I need to do, but tell everyone, hey, I'm following Jesus while doing this. Not like, oh, I'm just being nice. So I had thought about that for months. It had to have been months. I was just thinking about it all the time, asking my parents about it, and they're like, hey, there's no pressure. Like, you do it like you do when you feel like you're perfectly ready to do it. And I was like, well, and the more I kept thinking about it, the more I realized that I wasn't actually ready, and that there was just like this cloudiness that like I might not actually be understanding it. So that's when I asked my mom, I was like, hey, can I set up an appointment with Pastor Chris? And she was like, okay, like when, what about? And I was like, the soonest time possible, about baptism. She set it up, and I was like, cool. Came in, and it's like I sat down and we talked about it, and I was like, hey, and he just kind of led me through this entire thing of like, of leading me from that it's not about good works to get there, that it's that Jesus is already your salvation, and that the good works come after. Like, they're still good works, but instead of being a need-filled good work, it's a God-led good work, and that's when that changed for me. It's like the cloudiness like disappeared while we were reading through a few verses in Romans and Ephesians. Like, the cloudiness in my head just kind of dissipated. When we're reading through Ephesians that we are saved via salvation and His grace, not as a product of our good works, my mind went through a loop. Man, let me tell you, it's just like the past 21 years of my life the works didn't matter anymore in my head. Like, it wasn't a need-filled thing anymore, and that, looking back on it, it honestly wasn't even like I was doing it out of need. I honestly think that those were all God-led, just prior to me realizing, hey, you don't need to do this for a need. You do this through Him, through the Lord. And yeah, no, my mind just went total like bonkers mode. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to say. And those, like, as soon as you had asked like what I thought about it, I just didn't know what to think, what to say. It was just all of it. It's just a clarity that I couldn't speak through. Right then, when you had asked about if I had placed my faith in Jesus, and I originally had said no, and continuing if I wanted to do it right now, it's like when you first asked the question, you didn't put in the second part. My mind went, okay, maybe I have a few days to think about this. And then as soon as you asked the second part, I was like, I know what I need to do. And it was just because of the clarity that came through Ephesians. It was just like, I know right now that I can put my faith in Jesus. I can place my faith in Jesus. And it was just awesome. In the past couple of weeks since I had placed my faith in Jesus, let's see. Well, I went on vacation. That was one thing that had happened. But I went down there. I helped my dad out with a sunny-do list that my grandma had presented him. And what I did wasn't really like on the sunny-do list. It was just kind of like two things that needed to happen. And that was bush hogging part of a field and mowing the rest of her yard. And like, I knew I had wanted to do that because that's like just fun for me to do. But I was out there for 5 hours. It's like each day, because I split up into 2 days. So I was out there for like 5 hours each day. And while sitting there alone on the tractor in the field, it was just the realization that, yes, I was doing a good work for somebody, but it was different. It was different this time, because I now know that it's not because I need to do it, that it was because the Lord is leading me to do these good works for His purpose. It was just awe-inspiring just to like recollect and like notice that change and notice that click. And I was just really happy about it all. Like, not because I was having fun, like I was having a lot of fun doing it, but man, knowing that this was for the Lord, that this was something that He led me to do. Well, my advice for someone who hasn't placed their faith in Jesus or is confused about the good works is go read Ephesians chapter 2, verse 1 to 10, and just think about it verse by verse. And because that's what really opened my eyes, is when you and I had read it together and we went over it one verse at a time, is that just slow inhale of those verses were really what brought my mind back to reality, back to like what the Bible is actually trying to teach, and back to what God's purpose is, and what God's purpose for you and your life. Just go and read those verses. Think about what you've done in the past and why you've done it. After reading those verses, take another look back and see actually why you did it, because that's what helped me the